This movie begins with Joanna and her husband, Wojtek, lying in bed with arms over each other. Joanna goes over to the window, opens it, and begins watching the handsy old couple. Joanna tells Wojtek that the couple are kissing and making out in public while people watch them. Wojtek quickly jumps out of bed to steal a look at them. The couple don't care about people watching them and make out to their satisfaction before dispersing. As one of them walks towards Joanna's window, Joanna and Wojtek hide so they don't get caught. Joanna and Wojtek have their house full. Their eldest son, Adam, together with his wife, Karina, and Leon, their kid, live with them. Joanna's mom, who has Alzheimer's, also lives with them, together with Yannick, Joanna's youngest son. The house is a bit rowdy as everyone is going about their duties and chores. Wojtek tells Joanna to pick up some groceries on her way back, and she agrees. Wojtek and Joanna are going to work. Joanna is driving and she holds the brake abruptly repeatedly, so Wojtek calls her attention to it. She apologizes, but does it again. This time, she almost hits someone trying to cross the road. Wojtek offers to drive instead, but Joanna tells him that the last incident wasn't her fault. Joanna assures him that all is in control and asks him not to fret. She promises that they'll get to the school without further incidents. They finally get to their destination, the school where Wojtek is the headmaster and Joanna is a teacher. Joanna, who's teaching a class, calls on Monkey to recite a line. Monkey does, but mispronounces a word. Monkey doesn't sound like she's feeling too well, so Joanna asks her to stand so she can evaluate her. In evaluating her, Joanna hugs her for a few seconds, and then deems that Monkey is not well. She promises to call a taxi for Monkey, so Monkey can go home and take care of herself. As the student leaves the class, Joanna receives a text on her phone. The sender tells Joanna that she's screwed. Wojtek is at his office when Maciek enters. Wojtek tells him that it's high time they talked about the pigeon problem. Wojtek thinks that Maciek has to stop feeding the pigeons. He says as long as Maciek feeds them, the place would keep getting littered. Maciek looks upset but he succumbs and then leaves. Maciek looks for Joanna and goes over to meet her. When he gets there, he startles her because she'd been fixated on her phone. They exchange some quirky pleasantries, and Maciek tells her to tone down her words. He thinks that prolonged hours of phone usage is an unhealthy menace that has ravaged all and sundry, especially the young ones. Joanna tells Maciek that he would be a perfect teacher for the students. Maciek goes on to reveal the surprising news he has heard. Joanna hugged Monkey, his child. Joanna loses focus when Wojtek starts winking at her from the little glass opening on his door. Maciek notices this and asks her if all is well with her, so she concurs that all is indeed well. Maciek reiterates that Joanna looks very unhealthy, but Joanna tells him that she is indeed healthy. Joanna leaves work and goes to see the doctor, who checks her vitals, and the doctor asks her some questions. The doctor wants to know if Joanna has been exposed to the herpes virus recently. Joanna tells the doctor that she isn't sure about that and goes on to ask the doctor certain questions. Doctor infers that people shouldn't check the symptoms of their illness on Google. The doctor tells her that she'll have to do a CAT scan anyway. Back at school, Joanna is very particular about her students doing well, so she watches while they do some classwork. Later, Joanna is at her mother's apartment. She lights up a joint and smokes it. Maciek comes and stands by the door, jokingly telling her that her neighbors have filed a complaint that she smokes too much. Maciek then shrugs off his tracksuit, and Joanna takes off her trousers. Maciek joins her inside. Joanna is now almost and lying on the couch while she takes pictures of Maciek dancing. Much later, Maciek lies on the floor with his face to the ground. Joanna, who is now fully unclad, lays on top of him and caresses his body. Joanna then goes back to lying on the couch while Maciek sits on the ground as they chat. Maciek rolls a joint for both of them. As he rolls the joint, Joanna tries to roll one for herself, but Maciek stops her. She needs to just sit and relax while he gives her princess treatment by rolling her own joint. Maciek, who's recording on his phone, jokingly asks Joanna what she'd have done if given an opportunity to do anything without limits. She says that she'd be smoking a joint while she lays in front of a teacher from an agricultural school. Maciek now wants to know what next, should this offer be given to her in another life. She starts by taking Maciek through her family battles. Her mom has Alzheimer's, her youngest son may not graduate from school, and her eldest son can't handle being a father. Her husband is falling apart. She goes on to say that the situation puts all of them in a tight place as they need each other at the moment. Maciek thinks that Joanna wants a world without her family, but she remarks that without them, she has no one. Joanna gets back home. The house is rowdy as usual as Adam battles it out with Leon. Grandma tells them not to try to force Leon to eat. While Wojtek goes out for a run, Joanna goes up to Yannick's room where he's dancing and playing loud music. Joanna encourages him to stop dancing and make himself more useful in and around the house. Joanna, who likes to get everything fixed, goes on to fix the sink while Adam finds it hard to even help her out. Witek and Joanna are in their room. Witek teases her about smoking and she tries to contain her anger. Witek wonders why she can tease him, but when he teases back, there's almost always a problem. Joanna and her mom smoke outside of their house without saying a word to each other. The next day, Witek and Joanna get to school and notice that the students are clustered in a manner that suggests that something has happened. They alight from the car and see a graffiti on the wall, saying they are all screwed. Witek steps in and dismisses the students. There's a staff meeting and the Polish teacher is hell-bent on the school authority fishing out the culprit behind the graffiti. She thinks that if nothing is done, other students will follow the trend and start defacing and vandalizing school properties. Witek announces to them that he has reported to the police and they're on their way. It's all jokes to Witek though. He has no intention of inviting the police. He thinks it's not a serious issue and they can just clean the graffiti, letting the matter slide. The Polish teacher objects and says she'd have done things differently. Witek reminds her that when she applies for the post of headmaster and wins, then she can go on to implement whatever she likes. The meeting ends and Witek leaves. Joanna and his family are about to enter their car to go home when they meet Maciek at the parking lot trying to fix his car. Witek offers to drop him and Monkey off, but Maciek declines. He's sure the car will be fixed in no time, and they can go their way. Monkey, however, joins them. On their way from school, Monkey sees a picture of Joanna and gives high praises to her. Joanna notices a cardboard note pinned to the back of the car and makes an abrupt stop in the middle of the road before alighting to take the note off. The cars behind them honk incessantly, but she doesn't care. As she hops back in, she steps on the throttle wrongly and jerks the car. Witek thinks she isn't in the best frame of mind to drive. He asks to switch places with Joanna, but she declines. Witek remains firm with his decision. Without Joanna agreeing, Witek hops out, goes over to the driver's seat, and begins driving. They do this while parked in the middle of the road. Joanna is in the toilet. She's reading a note that states she'll pay for her sins. Witek knocks at the door, and Joanna comes out. They notice that Grandma is cleaning the window, and Witek tells her to stop. Joanna thinks she should be allowed, though. Witek then tells her to go get some groceries, and she agrees. Joanna comes back from the grocery store. She notices that the window Grandma was cleaning is a mess and calls out to Witek to tell him that the window is oily. Witek believes that Grandma has done weird things lately because of her age. He infers that Grandma doesn't have much time left to live. Joanna goes on to clean the window properly. As she does that, she notices that Adam is back home with a drunk Yannick. She goes on to assist and help Yannick to his room. Karina comes in and begins scolding Adam. She expects Adam to take responsibility as he's not a child anymore. They both have a disagreement. Then she storms out to go attend to Leon, who has food poisoning. He's been crying intermittently. As Karina storms out, she screams that the house itself is poison. Yannick goes on to throw up in a bucket provided by Joanna. It's night, so Witek and Joanna are in bed, unclad. There's a spark between them and they act on it. When they're done, they drift off into sleep. Joanna goes to work, and she gets greeted by students and staff alike. She's hugged by some and kissed on the cheek by one staff member. As Witek watches on, he notices that Maciek behaves like he's more than Joanna's colleague. Maciek is willing to help her get things done. Joanna is teaching her class when someone comes and tells her that Witek needs her presence. She argues at first that she's having a class at the moment, hence she can't leave. She's told that it's urgent, so she finally agrees and goes to see Witek, but before she leaves, she gives the students work to do. She enters Witek's office, and Witek tells her that someone is trying to hurt them. He hands over a letter that was sent to him, to Joanna. The letter reads that Joanna is using her mother's apartment to do things that aren't legal. Joanna had talked about using her mother's apartment for extra lessons for students. Witek is scared that she might run into trouble if people find out that she runs extra lessons and doesn't pay taxes. The Polish teacher comes into the office. She's here to tell Witek that the police have come to take his statement for the graffiti case. Witek replies the police will wait for him for a while. As the Polish teacher leaves, Witek tells Joanna that she'd be made to run a test and to prepare herself. Joanna is angry that Witek hasn't told her about this before now. Witek argues that Joanna doesn't tell him everything either, so he sees nothing wrong with him not forewarning her. Back in the classroom, with Joanna still in Witek's office, Monkey goes over to the board. She writes the same words from the graffiti on the board and leads her fellow students to chant them. Joanna enters the class, and the chanting stops. Monkey goes back to her seat. Joanna calls her back and requests that she turn in her work, the one she had asked them to do before she got back from Witek's office. Monkey acts nonchalantly. In a lackadaisical way, she says she was distracted, so she didn't get it done. When Joanna asks her to suggest what should be done, Monkey replies that she goes on strike. The class erupts with laughter, but Joanna shuts them up and asks Monkey to go sit down while they continue the class. At home, Joanna is reading and suddenly decides to switch the placement of the table. Witek comes and wants her to stop, but she disagrees. As Joanna pushes the table, Witek drags the table with her, and they trade words. Witek reminds Joanna that she can decide to tell him to leave if she wants. Joanna accuses Witek of not knowing the things she likes. She throws a book Witek's way, making him angry enough to leave. Joanna sits with Leon, Grandma, and Karina. She's playing with Leon when Karina reminds her to make sure she doesn't let Leon swallow the tiles he's playing with. An argument ensues between Karina and Joanna. Both of them keep having this kind of issue. Karina is interested in making Leon comfortable, but she mixes some vocabulary while making her point. Joanna tries to correct her, and this turns into yet another argument. A fresh argument now begins between Grandma and Joanna. Grandma thinks that Joanna is doing too much. She says that Joanna is leaning over Leon because she bought a toy for him. Joanna argues that Grandma is making baseless assumptions. She's tired of the arguments, so she gets up and leaves. Joanna notices a loud noise from Yannick's room. She storms inside the room and meets him smoking. She puts off the music and asks Yannick when he began smoking, but Yannick ignores her, so she storms out of the room. She has a change of clothes and goes out to get some fresh air. Witek enters a bar where there's a live band singing. He sits and orders for a cup of juice. Joanna is at her mother's apartment. She's tensed, so she lights a cigarette. As she smokes, she feels relieved. A call comes in, and she answers. She hears an automated voice reciting the exact words she said to Mikaik the last time they both were in the apartment. She's scared, so she locks all the windows and closes the curtains. She sits in the middle of the room with so many emotions running through her. Witek is sipping from his cup of juice when the Polish teacher comes and rests on his back. She repeats the graffiti words on the school wall to him and moves along. Joanna goes to answer the door, and it's Adam. As Adam enters, he catches the smell of smoke and remarks that he's sure Witek doesn't know. Joanna goes on to tell Adam that she's having an affair. She needs Adam's help to navigate through these times. Adam wonders why Joanna is bringing him into this, and Joanna wants to know what Adam would do if he were in her shoes. Adam advises her to tell Witek. She agrees but states that she'd do that much later. She goes on to tell Adam to help her get someone in the forensic department. She wants to get the fingerprint of the person who sent the letter. Back at home, it's morning, and Joanna wakes up to a rash covering a part of her face. She wakes Witek up and shows him the rash. All through the day, Witek does all he can to make Joanna comfortable. He suggests that they go out as a family, but Joanna doesn't see the need. Yannick already knows that Karina would have a thing or two to say about Joanna's plight, and immediately, Karina enters the house. As they sit around the dining table to eat, Karina says that Joanna's plight is a biblical punishment. Yannick concurs. She thinks that Joanna has some sins to confess, and he encourages her to go ahead and spill. Joanna goes to the doctor for an examination. While Witek is at work, he hears Machik making an announcement in his usual manner, using a public address system. This is what he does anytime he wants to feed the pigeons in the school. Witek walks up to him and warns him that he can't go on with this attitude. He tells Machik to pack up, but Machik argues. Witek takes the birds to feed and throws them away. He screams at Machik, then storms off. Adam has found a forensic personnel. He comes to collect other samples from the apartment. Adam tells Joanna that he has a friend who could help with the rash on her face, but she declines. She has specialist friends who'd handle that. There's a kind of animosity between Joanna and some staff members and students in the school. As she walks past the school hallways, she's looked at as though she's been caught in a crime. As she walks past the classes, she sees that many students are being tested for illegal substances. Joanna goes to a hidden park. She sits on a bench when Maciek shows up. He tells Joanna that he loves her and begs her to stop ignoring him because this makes him miserable. Joanna, who is still in love, can't resist Maciek. They kiss passionately. Now in school, staff members are having a meeting to discuss the indictment of their students in substance abuse. The police report the different kinds of illegal substances that the students tested positive for. As it stands, 3 students have given them reasons for expulsion. Witek tells Maciek that Monkey is part of the students. Joanna thinks that expulsion is too harsh a punishment. She wants them to wait a bit and not make hasty decisions. The Polish teacher cuts in that Joanna should keep her suggestions to herself till the result of her own substance test comes out. Joanna's smoking habit is now in the open and she storms out after hearing this. Witek goes after Joanna, who wants to know why Witek hasn't defended her. Witek doesn't think it makes any sense for him to defend her when the allegations are true. Joanna is pissed and walks out. Joanna enters her car and sees an envelope. She opens the envelope and finds explicit pictures of herself, making her scream. It's evening, and Witek is in his new spot, drinking juice, when the Polish teacher comes in. Witek knows what she wants, and he whispers in her ear that she's young enough to be his daughter. She says she doesn't care about that. At least she's not his daughter. Joanna and Adam drive to the school. They go with Leon since Karina has gone out with some friends. Joanna wants to find out who's been hunting her, so she seeks to check the school's CCTV. They find their way into the school and check the footage, finding what they're looking for. As they're about to leave, they notice footsteps approaching. They hide in Maciek's office till the footsteps fade, then they leave. Witek is having fun in the bar with the Polish teacher, dancing, and having a good time. Now at home, Witek tells Joanna that Monkey and Janek will be expelled. They get into an argument with regards to this. Witek doesn't want to start the day with quarreling and arguments, so he becomes nice to Joanna. While they sit around the dining table, Leon is crying, and Karina thinks that if only Joanna can grant them access to her mom's apartment, then they'd be free of Leon. Janek wants to know why Joanna doesn't want to give Adam and Karina the apartment. This makes Joanna angry. Joanna and Witek go see a doctor for Grandma's sake. The doctor explains that Grandma is getting close to her demise. Much later, they all check Grandma into an elderly people's home, and Grandma is angry that they've sent her there. She shouts at the doctor, using foul words on him. Janek questions Joanna's decision to put Grandma in an old people's home, and Joanna responds that she'd be waiting to see exactly what he'd do when it's her turn. Witek doesn't think Joanna has done the right thing. Joanna drives recklessly yet again. Her bad driving skills always puts Witek in an uncomfortable state. They pass by the school and hear Maciek using his public address system to gather the birds to feed them. Janek totally detests what Maciek does. As they continue driving, Grandma tells Joanna to slow down as she's frightened. Still in the car, Joanna's phone rings. She relays it's the bank calling and can't answer the phone while driving. Joanna's reckless driving becomes too much for Grandma to handle, so she becomes anxious and nauseous. She demands that Joanna stop the car so she can puke. Much later, Joanna is tending to Grandma. Witek and Janek discuss Joanna's self-righteousness and stubbornness with Witek saying he doesn't like that about Joanna. Witek expresses that both Joanna and Janek have the same bad traits. Joanna and Maciek are at the apartment where they have their affair. There's loud music playing, and Joanna dances her heart out. As usual, they're smoking. Much later, with the music off, Joanna lays on top of Maciek in their usual manner. The doorbell rings, and Maciek scampers to hide. Joanna goes to answer the door, and it's Karina and Adam. Karina has come to ask Joanna to give them the apartment, even though the apartment means a lot to her. Karina conveys they're having a hard time raising Leon while staying with them. Karina encourages Joanna to get a smaller space for her cheating escapades. She relays that she doesn't need a big house for her sinful activities. Joanna is surprised at Karina's words, but Karina promises not to tell Witek though. She doesn't care about ruining Joanna's marriage. Joanna gives her some advice about not letting her happiness depend on other people's decisions. She goes further to tell her that if she does depend on people's decisions, she'll never be happy. After Karina and Adam take their leave, Maciek comes out and decides they'd have to find a way around the situation, as they can't continue living as they are. Joanna is sad. Much later, Adam meets with Joanna and tells her that the fingerprints on the letter, with the other samples she has provided, do not match. Joanna voices she'll have to continue searching. Adam advises her to try to talk to Witek, but Joanna snaps at him. She talks to him rudely, which gets Adam angry. Adam starts screaming at her and lashes out that she's ungrateful. He reminds her of the illegal things he's been doing lately because of her. The next day, Joanna is in school and she enters her empty classroom. Before the students come, she places a device at the top of the board. As the students enter the class, Witek comes in and asks Monkey to follow him to his office. Joanna objects, not allowing Monkey to leave the class. At Witek's office, Witek shows Joanna CCTV footage from when she and Adam entered the school at night. Witek reminds her that he can't defend her if this video comes out. To keep her image, Witek gives her a 1-year sabbatical leave, but she picks offense and leaves the office. On her way out, she receives a call, and the voice informs her that there's a video already sent to her. The voice tells her to show that video to her family that evening, or else the whole world will see it the next day. It's a video from one of Joanna and Maciek's sexual escapades. That evening, she goes on and shows the video to her family. The video gets awkward, and Janek closes the computer. Witek is saddened by this and reminds Joanna of the vow they made to each other. Joanna cuts in and voices that she can't take what Witek dishes out anymore. She talks about how she has stood by Witek and that she'll no longer accommodate Witek's emotional blackmail. She laments that she's tired of Witek and tired of the kind of life she's living in the house. Grandma is tired too, so she gets up to leave. Joanna accuses her of being a bad parent. She also accuses Adam of being weak and wonders why Karina married a weakling. She laments Yannick is insensitive, ripping into everyone in the house until Adam shouts at her to shut up. He and Joanna trade words, with Joanna reiterating that she is sick of everyone. They realize that Grandma is nowhere to be found and go looking for her everywhere. Witek finds Grandma and Joanna meets them there. She expresses that she'll find somewhere to go for now. Witek asks her when she'd be back, but she answers that she doesn't know. Yannick goes drinking and fondles an envelope, the exact type that Joanna gets her letters in. He mutters some words that stand against the vices Joanna has been involved in. It's a ceremony day at the school. While the students gather in their class, Joanna is also present, and Witek comes in. He tells them that the school has reconsidered and won't be expelling anyone anymore. He reminds them not to attend the ceremony late. When Witek leaves, Joanna announces to the class that she has handed in her resignation. She remarks it's the last day of her being their teacher. She thanks them for teaching her, and specifically directs a special thanks to one of them, the one who taught her the most. She goes to her mother's apartment to cool off like she always does. Yannick comes visiting, and as they sit on the floor, Yannick reminds her that she's in a screwed-up situation. He tells her that she's a whore, but Joanna doesn't see anything wrong with it, and they both laugh. Much later, every member of Joanna's family comes to the apartment. They sit with Joanna and are empathetic towards her. While they're there, Maciek rings the doorbell, and Witek answers. He hasn't timed his coming, but Witek allows him in. Everyone who Joanna loves stays by her side.